All right, FLSun. Once again, I got some things I need to get off my chest. Things that I think will serve the best interests of all of you and the 3D printing community as a whole. So sit down, buckle up, and let's get after it. Recently, I did a video where I shared some things that had really been bothering me, and I made some suggestions that I would like to see changed in the industry at large. I was honestly overwhelmed and humbled by the amount of support, love, and thoughtful conversations that were sparked by that video. So first of all, seriously, thank you guys. You're amazing. Now that video obviously struck a chord, and it really got me thinking. I've now spoken up for content creators and open source developers before, but what about all of you? Of course, I wouldn't have the audacity to say that I speak for the entire 3D printing community, but I do think that I read enough comments, I spend enough time on our Discord server, and I test enough new 3D printers that I can accurately put my finger on some of the major gripes that we as a community are really fed up with. Things that we really want to see 3D printing manufacturers change or do away with entirely in 2025. So in this video, I want to go through my list of grievances, both big and small, with the 3D printing manufacturers, and I want to let them know exactly where the dog died. And of course, if you feel that I don't speak for you on any of these issues, then please feel free to let me and others know in the comments below. After all, I realized that many of these decisions are being made by the manufacturers at a time where 3D printing is really going mainstream. And those decisions represent the fact that the manufacturers are looking to go beyond our small and highly passionate community of hobbyists. So I don't know how this is going to go over. Maybe the manufacturers will ignore everything that I have to say, or maybe they'll find a way to go after that mainstream consumer in a way that doesn't alienate all of us die-hard power users that honestly brought 3D printing to where it is today. Either way, I'm just gonna speak my piece, and I'm gonna hope both that it results in better products and user experiences for all of us, and that the manufacturers I'm about to call out will take it as what it is: constructive criticism shared with their success in mind, rather than as an attack on them that ultimately leads to them blacklisting me. Fingers crossed. So all right, here we go. First things first, let's get the most obvious one out of the way, which is closed ecosystems. If the whole Bambu Lab firmware update kerfuffle has taught us anything, it's that the 3D printing community, at least the vast majority of it, does not like feeling locked in to proprietary or closed ecosystems, particularly if that means that they cannot access or control their hardware the way they want to. This has been most notable recently with Bambu Lab restricting users from printing or controlling their machines directly from Orca Slicer, but it does extend well beyond that. For a long time, many of us reluctantly and cautiously put up with Bambu Lab and their closed ecosystem because in exchange, we got a much better product and user experience. But that better product and user experience is honestly just not good enough to completely shut out every other software, third-party touchscreen, FARB management suite, or plugin outright. People love to compare Bambu Lab to Apple, but even Apple doesn't fully lock users out. Imagine if Apple suddenly blocked all third-party apps and forced you to only use Apple software. I mean, nobody would stand for that, especially years after the sale, and we shouldn't here either. Nor should we have to install custom firmware, switch to LAN mode, or forgo all future firmware updates if we just want more freedom. And by the way, I don't mean to single Bambu Lab out here. They aren't the only one who's guilty of this. Anycubic also alarmingly seems to be going further and further down the path of lockdown proprietary firmware as well. Plus, a recent software update made it so that even my FLSun T1 Pro can only be accessed from within FLSun's own slicer. As in, the machine seems to be refusing connections from any web browser or Orca Slicer. So yeah, FLSun seems to have locked down their Clipper fork without open sourcing it, which likely violates the open source license, but even ignoring that, why would they block out this basic functionality? I mean, how does this help the user in any way, shape, or form? I almost don't want to believe that they did this intentionally, but unfortunately, I've been going back and forth with multiple different people at the company for weeks now, and I just can't get a clear answer. So FLSun, if you're watching this, please stop it. Though, at least someone out there has already done the work to create a mainline clipper version for the T1 and T1 Pro, so in the case of FLSun, I can just easily flash it to my own firmware, though they do lock you out of SSH, so I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but I digress. To sum up this first point, we want to use our hardware with whatever software or plugins that we want without restrictions or limitations as to which plugins or even third-party hardware we can connect to it. Which leads me to, once upon a time, things were really simple. Pretty much everyone out there who wanted remote access used Octoprint, both for Marlin or even for Clipper printers, and you could just connect remotely using a service like Obico or Octo Everywhere. One cloud solution, all your printers. But today, and this might just be me with so many different kinds of printers, though I do know that most of you have more than one printer, this whole thing has become a major hassle. You have Creality Cloud, Anycubic Cloud, Prusa Connect, Bambu Cloud. You have Octo Everywhere or Obico for your Clipper or open source printers. Even FLSun is getting into the game with their own cloud and app. It's a mess. Can't we just get one cloud software and app combo that connects to all of our printers so that I could view all my printers in one place on the web or via one single mobile app? Like, I know I'm asking you guys to play nicely together, but is it really too much to ask? Yes, there are some farm management solutions that will connect to most of them, and Octo Everywhere can connect to many of them as well, but not all of them. So I end up having 10 different mobile apps and needing to go to a bunch of different websites or desktop apps or slicers to be able to just print remotely. What if instead all these manufacturers just open up their own API access to the printers, allowing someone like Octo Everywhere to just connect to every printer? Not just Clipper and Octoprint printers, but all of them. I'm looking at you, Anycubic Kobra S1, Creality K2, and FLSun T1 Pro. Heck, even the companies who have a great cloud suite and mobile app, companies like Bambu Lab or Prusa, they could benefit from giving users the option to manage their printers remotely using a third-party app or cloud if they want to. But the main benefit of creating such an open API would be for my next point. It's at this point then that we're going to talk about the big one. In fact, I would call this the linchpin of this entire video. The main reason that I felt I really just got to say something and get all of this off my chest. And that point is rebranded slicers. Listen, to all of you who work at a 3D printer manufacturer, look at me. Come here. Come closer and listen. Really listen. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants your crappy, reskinned, branded slicer. Seriously, nobody. Look, I get it, okay? Bambu Lab and Prusa, the industry leaders, they have their own slicers. And I also get it that you want to offer a soup to nuts ecosystem for your users. And I know that many of you have embraced Orca Slicer in a way by forking it instead of, say, Prusa Slicer. But listen to me and really hear me on this. Nobody wants your reskinned slicer. Stop taking Orca Slicer, making it worse, stripping out functionality, and forcing us to install yet another program. I think on this one, I can speak for literally the entire 3D printing market when I say, just stop. Stop it right now. Instead of creating your own fork, here's what we want you to do. Contribute to Orca Slicer itself. Instead of paying your software developers to reskin and enshittify Orca, you could just contribute monetarily to Orca Slicer's development so that maybe, God willing, one day we'll be able to entice Soft Fever and other major contributors to actually work on it full time. Or if you want to keep your own software developers on staff, no problem. Have them submitting changes to mainline Orca Slicer. In other words, stop sinking resources into reskinning your own branded slicers because nobody wants them. Heck, even Prusa, the people who have literally been carrying the open source slicer torch for a decade, even they are now working on deeply integrating their printers into Orca Slicer so that their users can just use Orca Slicer if they want to. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that they're gonna ever abandon Prusa Slicer, but it does mean that the writing is on the wall and the rest of you should definitely be paying attention. The people have spoken. Orca Slicer has won. In fact, I'm going to now go so far as to say, I don't want any printer that doesn't work with Orca Slicer right out of the box. And not just slicing either. I'm talking LAN and remote printing, cloud access, dashboard viewing within the slicer, mapping filaments for multicolor prints, all of it. So do what you need to do, but from now on, don't ask us to download your proprietary slicer. Whew. God, I feel a huge relief having gotten that off my chest. But while we're talking about the slicer, here's another thing that really grinds my gears. Getting a brand new, wonderful printer with one print profile for one nozzle size and only 5 filament profiles for the most basic filaments. I've talked about this before many times, in fact, so I won't go into too much detail, but one print profile is not enough. If you guys are so eager to emulate Prusa and Bambu Lab, then do it not by creating your own slicers and mobile apps, but rather by creating a plethora of print profiles. I want fast profiles, strong profiles, 4 to 5 different layer heights. I want a wide range of nozzle sizes. I mean, if you're selling a 0.6 and a 0.8 millimeter nozzle, then I should be able to download and import a full range of print profiles for that nozzle size from the day the printer ships, not 3 months later. And don't get me started on filaments. Y'all are shipping printers that can print the most complex and challenging materials on Earth, like PPS-CF and even PEEK. But I get 4 or 5 pathetic filament profiles? Nah, bro, that's not it. If your printer can print it, then we want profiles for it. And look, I get it. There are like 10,000 different filament brands out there, and you can't be expected to test and create profiles for all of them. But at least give me a starting point for each material type. PLA, PLA Pro, PLA Matte, PLA Silk, PLA CF, and then PETG, PETG CF, etc., etc. All the way up to PA, PA6, PA12, PACF, PCCF, PPSCF, PETCF, all of it. Here, manufacturers, I'll let you guys in on a little secret to help you get a leg up on this process. You know how one of the perks that I offer to my Patreon supporters, and one of the main reasons people sign up, is for the filament and printer profiles that I provide for Orca Slicer and even provide for unreleased printers? Well, it's actually really easy, and I'm gonna tell you guys how I do it. Basically, I go into Prusa Slicer and Bambu Studio, and I look at their print and filament profiles, and I copy those as a starting baseline, and then I adjust using common sense. Like, if I know that a printer has an insanely high flow hot end, then I'll increase the speeds and the flow ratios, and 9 times out of 10, it takes like 1 or 2 rounds of revisions and test prints before the profile is nearly perfect. So if you guys were to take some of those software developers who are so busy skinning Orca Slicer and instead have them testing a wide range of materials and print profiles, you could have a full library of both ready on launch so that users wouldn't have to make their own profiles. So again, just do it. Which brings me to my next gripe, which is brass nozzles. We've now gotten to the point in 3D printing where a consumer can spend $299 to $450 and get an insanely capable enclosed machine that reaches temperatures like 320C for the hot end and 120C for the heat bed. Whereas even 2 years ago, you had to spend $1,000 or more to even come close to those temperatures. For under $400, you're now in PCCF and PPSCF territory. And yet, many of these printers are shipping with brass nozzles. But as my mother recently joked when I explained this frustration to her, the only thing we want made out of brass is our balls. Some companies have, of course, figured this out. Since the K1C and now the K2+, Creality is shipping their more capable printers with only hardened steel nozzles. Elegoo did the same with the Elegoo Centauri Carbon. Others, like Sovol, are including both hardened and regular nozzles in the box. But still more, from Anycubic all the way up to Prusa, are shipping brass. Guys, I get it. It is very competitive out there. You're trying to compete in a very tough market on price, and every dollar counts. But at the very least, offer it on the checkout page as a $10 or $20 upgrade. Some of these companies don't even release alternative nozzle sizes or materials for months after the printer ships. So you're basically stuck not being able to take full advantage of everything the printer can do for like half a year. You know what would be better is just take some of the money that you're no longer spending on your own slicers or cloud suites and instead give us a handful of hardened steel nozzles from 0.4 all the way to 0.8 right in the box. Because that's another frustration. I find it crazy when a company ships a printer that prints 350 cubed with only a 0.4 millimeter nozzle in the box. Yes, I know 0.4 gives you the best detail and the least stringing, but like, at least acknowledge that the user might want to print big stuff on a big printer and give them the option right in the box, not 4 months after launch. Fortunately, this is something that this video's sponsor, MicroSwiss, can actually help with. MicroSwiss offers a wide range of upgraded extruders, full hot ends, and nozzles for many of the most popular and capable printers on the market. Sure, they have their brand new Flowtech high flow and abrasion-resistant hot end for the Bambu Lab P1 and X1 series, but they also have drop-in upgraded Flowtech hot ends for the Sovol SVO8, the Creality K1 and K1 Max, the Ender 3 V3 series, the Elegoo Neptune 4, and many, many more. Best of all, they use the same Flowtech cold swappable nozzle throughout their lineup. So if you have a lot of printers, you can pick up a bunch of their affordable brass-plated nozzles for all your printers, and then invest in a small number of Flowtech Diamondback nozzles or their Flowtech CHT CM2 high flow nozzles, and you can swap those expensive nozzles between the different printers as needed. It's really like a whole Flowtech ecosystem. What's more, MicroSwiss manufactures all of their products right in the USA on Swiss-made, hence the name, manufacturing equipment, which ensures the absolute best quality you can find on the market today. So to check out MicroSwiss and their line of drop-in hot-end upgrades or extruders for your printer, visit the link in the description. All right, let's get back to the video. So we talked about brass nozzles. Now let's talk about another cost-cutting measure that honestly has got to stop. Cheap filament runout sensors. Simple runout detection is simply not enough. And as we want to appeal to more and more general audience beginner users, we really need a way to detect not just when the filament has run out, but also when it is clogged or stuck or tied around something. With bigger and better printers coming on the market, most of us are now doing longer prints and using trickier materials. And that inevitably means more opportunities for clogs and jams. What I'm getting at is, in 2025, there is absolutely no reason why all printers shouldn't ship with some kind of smart filament sensor or some other way of detecting jammed filament. Whether you accomplish this with a load cell in the toolhead or an external smart filament sensor, these things are very cheap. I think the BTT SFS is like $18 or $20 retail, so I can't imagine that it would be all that expensive if purchased in bulk. But the difference in the user experience is absolutely massive. Whether it's accidentally tangling a roll or the last bit of filament getting caught on the spool, filament jams do happen, and it's a real shame to lose a 40-hour print because of them. So manufacturers, if you're still listening and haven't gotten scared away yet, give us some smart filament detection. And finally, we've come to the end of the list, but by no means is this the least important one. Grid infill. You might not realize it, but it's kind of like the worst infill out there. It's wasteful in both time and material. It causes scraping and doubling back against things that are already printed, which can wear down your nozzle prematurely. And it's not even that strong compared to 3D infill patterns. And yet, across the board, whether in Prusa Slicer, Creality Slicer, Orca Slicer, Bambu Studio, it's somehow the default for most, if not all, profiles. Why? How did this happen? I mean, how have we not banded together and changed this? Yes, the user can obviously change it themselves, either every print or by creating their own profiles, but how many actually do? Especially as 3D printing goes more mainstream. I mean, there are so many better infill patterns out there. There's gyroid, there's the new crosshatch, there's cubic. Literally any of them would result in saving tons of material and tons of time, which would result in less wasted electricity. Like, I bet that if Soft Fever, Prusa, Ultimaker, and Bambu Lab all changed this as the default, it would result in like $1 million a year in saved filament, print hours, electricity, and labor hours to manually change the setting before every single print, which is what I'm doing right now. So like, what are we waiting for? Change it, right? Like, am I being unreasonable here? Anyways, those are my gripes, but I would love to hear what all of you have to say in the comments below. Was I way off base on any one of these, or did I speak for all of you? And also, did I miss anything? I love hearing from all of you guys, and I read just about every comment, for better or worse. Oh, and to the 3D printing manufacturers, I hope I haven't offended any of you guys by calling you out. I'm just using you as an example. And again, I have your best intentions in mind. I just want to see you guys create the products with the features that all of us want to buy. And I want to see you all succeed because it benefits myself and the consumer. So I really hope you guys won't take it personally. Anyways, that's all for this week, but I'll see all of you on the next layer.